The world's top female amateurs compete on golf's sacred grounds, Augusta National. Live on NBC Golf Channel, streaming on Peacock, the Augusta National Women's Amateur coming up later on this week. I go to Mike Florio in a time of need. There are times when we have a question. Todd will send it to Mike Florio. He usually responds, something that could be of a legal issue, Mike being a lawyer. And now I come to Mike Florio in a time of need. I don't know exactly what happened at the owners' meetings. I'm still trying to understand overtime. I'm trying to understand the onside kick, why the tush push was tabled. So, Mike, where do you want to start to enlighten me and hopefully our audience?
When you come to me in a time of need, Dan, is there any type of a bat signal involved that I'm not aware of? Or is it just Fritzy? Is it Fritzy texting me? That's the bat signal. It's the Fritz signal.
Yes. Right. Now, could the Eagles have demanded a vote yesterday with the tush push?
Well, no, that's not how it works. When the wind is blowing against a proposal passing, it tends to get tabled. Because if you put it up for a vote, you're going to get numbers that fall short of the requisite 24 to change the rules. And ESPN.com's Kalen Kaler reported that 16 teams were in favor of the Packers' proposal, which means 16 aren't. But the proposal itself from the Packers was very flawed. And I don't know whether they introduced a bad proposal just to get the conversation started. But the idea of banning the immediate pushing of the quarterback after he gets the snap, that opens a can of worms for officiating and consistency and replay review and tinfoil hat conspiracies. They threw the flag on that one when it wasn't really immediate and the fix is in. So I'm glad they're stepping back from that. And they're really getting to the heart of this. The heart of this is, do we want to get rid of the maneuver altogether of a player who has the ball being pushed from behind? The rule used to be you couldn't do it. They changed the rule because they were never enforcing it, and that was more down the field. Guys running for the first down. Here comes Jimbo Curvert chugging along and shoving him for the first down. It was never incorporated into the actual play. The Eagles realized 16 years after they allowed this, the Eagles realized we can weaponize this. That's the issue. Are we going to reset the clock to when you couldn't pull or push the player with the ball? And if they want to get rid of this, Dan, that's the easiest and best way to do it. Reset the clock to 2004 and say no more pushing. And then the Eagles will just run a quarterback sneak and they'll still kick everybody's ass, and they'll have to come up with some other way to explain why the Eagles are superior to everyone when it comes to these short yardage plays.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's why I said you can get rid of the tush push. The Eagles are still going to be dominating with that offensive line and with that quarterback in this position. But it feels like they table this because the NFL is not getting the results they want, which isn't fair to the Eagles. If you said, let's vote right now, why can't they ask for a vote right now? Well, so what if it doesn't pass? That's the opinion right now.
It's a great point. And let's play it out. If the Eagles had said, we demand a vote today on the Packers proposal, okay, it goes down 16-16. Not enough to pass. They could still reformulate a new proposal for May, which is what they're doing. I think a lot of this is just PR based. And
they're going to get rid of this, aren't they?
Well, this is what bothers me. I feel like, and it reminds me a lot of what happened when the Patriots were successful. The Patriots always cheat. That's what all the other teams would say. Because when the owners are asking the coaches and GMs that they've hired and paid a lot of money to, why can't you beat the Patriots? The easy thing to say is they cheat. So now we've found something the Eagles do that helps explain their dominance, and we're saying it's not football. It doesn't look like football. It's not safe. Well, where's the injury data? We don't have any, but we might have some at some point, so let's get rid of it now because it might not be safe at some point in the future. And what I don't like about it is, I feel like there's a lot of moving of the goalposts. And I almost feel like our political discourse has crept into football, where you have people making these transparently obvious self-interested arguments that are bullcrap. I almost said the other word, and I remembered you're FCC regulated, so I corrected myself. But they're making these arguments all because the Eagles have cracked the code and everybody else is standing there looking at the safe, and they don't even know how to begin to spin the dial. And it feels like to me that's what's going on here. Let's just call it what it is. The Eagles are kicking everybody's butt, and so let's just take away the best club that they have in the bag.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host with Chris Sims, the show that precedes ours on Peacock. All right, let's recap. Replay, onside kick, any other rule changes? I'll let you start with whatever's top on your list.
Well, the onside kick continues to be a dead play, and they've tabled until May the question of whether they'll allow the team that's trailing to try an onside kick at any point before the fourth quarter. And it was relevant in the Super Bowl because as the Chiefs were driving down 34-0, I said to Michael David Smith and Shereen Williams in the press box at the Superdome, hey, they might want to wait until the fourth quarter to score, because if they score in the third quarter, they can't do an onside kick. And it's kind of a dumb, arbitrary limitation on the opportunity to retain possession. But all that said, the onside kick currently is worthless. It's meaningless. I like the idea of a fourth and long play as a way to give the team that's trailing the opportunity to keep possession. But for now, they've done nothing with it. All they've done is they've changed the touchback point from the 30 to the 35, which will spark more returns. And it's funny, Dan, I've had people point out to me, we're so concerned about the safety of the tush push, which has been around for 3 years, and there's no evidence it's not safe. Meanwhile, we're going to have a dramatic increase in these kickoff returns with this new formation where even though you don't have the catastrophic injury potential with two guys going full speed, coming at each other 30 yards apart, you still get guys ear-holed in short yardage and kickers blown up, and that's not even a conversation. It's just a weird dichotomy right now.
Well, and then they're going to be pushing for an 18-game season. So you can't sit here and it's about player safety.
They are pushing. Yeah. Dan, it's just a matter of when. It's happening. It's just a matter of when.
Okay, but this is the last real chip for the Players Association. When you think about what can we get, now, can we ask for 3 more roster spots? Could we get can we get a third-string quarterback? Can we get somebody on offense, somebody on defense? Or whatever you're going to ask for. But this feels like last call for the Players Association to be able to go, we'll give you that 18th game. What do you think the players are going to want in return?
Well, and here's what it ultimately boils down to. Will the NFL wait until the current CBA expires in March of 2031, lock the players out until they cry uncle on an 18th game, and then get whatever deal the NFL has put on the table? Because we know what will happen. The players are never going to take the nuclear option. The owners will. So to get to 18 before 2031, what will the union want? And what can the union get? And a year ago, Lloyd Howell, the fairly new NFLPA executive director, was interviewed by, I believe, the Washington Post, possibly the Athletic. And when he was asked about 18 games, he said, who doesn't want more football? And it was a horrible negotiating posture. He has since backtracked. Yes. I don't know if you could put that toothpaste back in the tube, but in February, Dan, he adopted a more no way in hell posture, which is what you need to start from in order to get the best possible deal for the players, if it's going to happen. And I think the year to watch is 2029. That's when, and really it's after 29, when the CBA, not the CBA expires, but the TV deals are up for grabs. But, they could do it. They could do it whenever they want. The union and the league could come to an agreement on 18 games today if they wanted to. The question is, what can the players get? And you're right, more roster spots, maybe a little larger piece of the pie, just basically anything else you want. If the league wants to get to 18 now, ask for everything. Hell, I've even suggested in the past, somewhat jokingly, go ahead and offer 20 games, because we know we're going to get to 20 games one of these days. 20 games and no preseason games, and ask for everything now. Let's go ahead. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Let's do 20, and here's the list of everything we'd want to go to 20.
Overtime regular season, overtime postseason. Are they aligned?
Not now. No. No, not the way that I think it could have been. Look, I don't like the idea of a 15-minute overtime in the regular season, because what if you're playing a Thursday after you play a Sunday and you go 15 minutes of overtime on Sunday, and then you got to turn around on Thursday and potentially go 15 minutes of overtime then too. But by doing only 10 minutes and guaranteeing a possession for each team, we're going to get into a situation where the team that receives the kick potentially is going to chew up, 8, 9 minutes on a touchdown drive. And Chris Sims made a great point today. You get around the 35 of the other team, and that defense might say, well, maybe we're going to let them score a touchdown here because we want to have a fair crack to answer the touchdown instead of having them take the rest of the time off the clock. And we're in a 2-minute offense to try to match this touchdown. I think that they made a mistake by not going back to 15 minutes because you want to have both teams to have a fair shot at a possession in that overtime period. And I think if that's the case, you'll see most teams, if they win the toss, choose to kick. And then if the team that receives gets a touchdown, you'll see an opportunity to try to score and go for 2 and end it there. With 10 minutes, I don't think it's as obvious that the right choice is to kick if you win the toss.
More reviewable plays with replay?
I like it, but I don't like what they've done. I don't like this discrepancy between we'll use replay assist to determine whether or not to pick up a flag that was thrown that shouldn't have been thrown. For example, horse collar tackle, they throw the flag, they look at it, clear and obvious evidence, there was no horse collar tackle, you pick up the flag. But face mask, Sam Darnold getting the Linda Blair treatment from The Exorcist on that Thursday night against the Rams. The referee didn't see it, the umpire didn't see it, and we got the explanation, well, they're down there, they can't see everything. Okay, fine, but replay sees it, we all see it. Oh, but we're not going to put a flag on the field? That to me doesn't solve the problem. There's still this donut hole in the gap between what the officials see on the field and what we see at home. And the excuse, like we don't want to officiate the game from the booth, you're already doing that. We don't want to it's a non-starter to put a flag down. You've had for years the ability to use replay to put a flag down for 12 men on the field. So I don't like it. I think it's a half measure. I think it's going to cause more problems. And hopefully next year they'll realize we need to go ahead and use it for, if there is or isn't, or was or wasn't, for just a narrow handful of plays where we can all see that the foul did or didn't happen.
I think one of the more exciting plays, even though it's not a play, but it's a moment, are we going to lose the chain gang coming out to measure for a first down? I love that. But is modern technology going to keep those guys on the sidelines?
Well, Dan, that's the reason why they kept doing it for over 100 years. Think back to when football was first invented. How do we determine whether or not the team with the ball got 10 yards? I know, let's get 2 sticks and 10 yards of chain link, and we'll use that to determine it. And it does create a moment of drama when the big orange stick gets pulled and maybe Gene Steratore has to pull a card out of his pocket and bend over and did it really get there? And sometimes you'll see, and you see a lot of high school games where that orange stick, which way the wind is blowing, a little bit here, and it's a first down. But this is where the stakes of the game nowadays, especially with legalized gambling, they cry out for a full embrace of technology. Let's get everything right that we can get right. And let's set aside the things that have been in place for 100 years. There are better ways to do it. And you're right, that moment is going to be gone now, except when the Hawkeye system ends up being down and they have to use the chains. But I think there's such an imperative now for the league to try to get everything right. With so much money bet legally on our phones, coast to coast, on the outcomes of these games, they have to get these calls right.
I don't spend a lot of time on the Cowboys, but when I do, it's usually about Jerry Jones and trying to understand a man who, took a $150 million investment and made it worth $10 billion, but trying to understand how he negotiates, that he likes to see a little bit more. Well, every time he's wanted to see a little bit more, he spends a whole lot more. He did it with Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and now he's saying apparently he's got to see a little bit more with Micah Parsons before he ponies up the biggest contract to anybody other than quarterbacks. So is there a method to the madness here that Jerry Jones is doing something that we're not seeing the genius behind it?
I think Jerry Jones is the prime example of how certain skills that allowed you to make the money that enabled you to purchase an NFL team are not transferable to how to be as successful as you can be when you own the NFL team. This is a guy who has done great business deals, and he has capitalized on his leverage, and he knows how to twist arms the right way and schmooze someone at the right moment to get them to agree to a deal that maybe isn't in their best interest, but it's definitely in his best interest and his oil leases and all of his other billions that have come from that world. It doesn't work here. They drag their feet with all of these key players. They have paid the wrong guys at times. They have failed to pay the right guys. They wait too long. They have gotten themselves painted into a corner with Dak Prescott twice. The Micah Parsons contract, if you really want to do it, you could do it in an hour. Max Crosby and the Raiders did a new deal literally in 2 or 3 hours. And you don't need to have a ticking clock. Like, Jerry wants to wait for a clock that is ticking toward midnight to do his deals. The problem is you get a player who stays away from the offseason program, stays away from training camp, isn't there until right before the start of the season, and then all of a sudden he's not the same guy. It's a bad way of doing business. They've burned themselves multiple times in the past. They're stubborn about it. And they're dragging their feet on Micah Parsons. And now, Dan, he's trying to negotiate directly with Parsons and cut out his agent, which is a CBA violation. And he's open about it. It's ludicrous, and it's a bad way of doing business. If you're a Cowboys fan, any Cowboys fans listening, you should demand better from the guy who is the steward of your favorite team, because this is one of the reasons why it's been 30 years since they've played in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, it's too late for that. It's when his son takes over that you ask for something better.
I don't think it's going to get any better. He's learned from Jerry, and he's not taking the wheel from Jerry and doing things differently. I mean, look, let's face it, and I want to be respectful of the situation, but there is a point where Jerry is no longer going to have his fastball. That's when Steven's got to step up. And we've maybe seen some evidence the past few years to say, hey, Steven, it's time for you to take over and get things done a different way.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for answering the call.
Anytime.
I feel smarter. He's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, contributor to Football Night in America.